my training being generally very concise when it needs to be or when I choose to be, and then it's very playful and not so time oriented, or no sets and reps on the clock kind of thing too. But thinking about that and I've used that many times in coaching too, like we're doing 7 minutes of actual work here, guys, and we have a lot of that. We're still feeding that dominant effort, but I'm having more fun with it. And I also whatever random tire, I don't know what a good throw is with that. I don't have the objective number where I take out the tape measure, I pick up the bells, whatever. I know unless somebody hands me the bells and I can't see, I'm blinded to that. I know what's good, or I have an expectation, or I have something I'm creating a story about that I should be able to do, where I did this before. Starting in 2015, we ran the TSC religiously every time until COVID, we actually had, I think it was during the early days of COVID, we still had, when we combined with other gyms or my brothers and sisters, people that worked for me over the years too, will still congregate together and host the TSC. So I'm 100% on board with that, or some form of competition. We always had the TSC built into where we just had our testing standards, or we try to wrap it into a challenge.
Hey, what's up guys? Thank you for joining me and welcome to the show. It is a true blessing to be able to connect with the top minds in strength each and every week and share stories, insights, and experiences on becoming stronger in every area of our lives. And now I want to do more for you. I want to invite you to join the exclusive private Facebook group of The Strength Connection. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength in their lives, and it's the perfect space to explore ideas and share your journey. You'll also get exclusive access to the Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. Just go to the Facebook groups, type in the Strength Connection, and you'll be accepted immediately. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the inside. Welcome back, everybody. John, dude, it's so good to see you, man. It's been too long. How are you?
I am doing great. Enjoying this beautiful weather. Just sitting at least partially in the sun too, where I can still see you and see the camera. I think I got this thing down. So I love being outdoors. I know we're going to talk a lot about that too. So let's roll with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just sitting here like I'm super jealous. I want to just go and just hang with you on that porch. It looks absolutely beautiful. So
it is. It's like that perfect day where it's about 65 degrees in the sun, and we have a few more of these days to come. Of course, there's always distraction. You hear the airplane above you and the outdoor recordings, but I think I've done all of my recordings for my programs that I've worked on with Original Strength Institute there. And just was thinking about that. That's kind of a sense of accomplishment that I've done all like 25 new videos for my new program. And then all my other stuff that I shoot is almost always outside. So you realize the weather challenges, the sound and the dogs barking, but it keeps it real. It's definitely a dream come true to be able to, talk with good people like you and dig into these topics and just have a little more space, or like you talk about in your last article, that negative space, which doesn't have to be negative as in bad. It's a very positive space for me, that openness, that quiet space to, like you talk about between sets and reps, but also having that built into my day. I could go on and on about that kind of morning routine and flow, and having this right now where I don't have to jump into all the heavy grind stuff or seeing clients back to back. It just allows me to sometimes get in my own way and get maybe too far down a rabbit hole, but it's great to just have that. I'll have the specific area that I'll be, writing on, journaling on, just thinking about that's usually on my mind already, or something that's kind of unsettled in work and personal or whatever, where I'll break that out and I'll take time to process it, I guess you could just say. And I think we're lacking that in our society a lot. So, the saying like stop and smell the roses, or just taking that time to be present with yourself, or honor ourselves, honor our friends and family too, by going a little deeper at least.
Yeah. Well, but first off, the natural environment with the sights and sound, it shows it's all natural. It's not fake behind you on that. But that piece you just mentioned, I know we're going to talk about some outdoor training and really what that does for us. As you were talking there, John, I just went this past weekend to see the Van Gogh immersive experience which if you haven't heard that before, it's pretty much like a museum experience that's like 3D, and it's all of Van Gogh's paintings. Like the first part is all his life of when he lived in Amsterdam, but then the second part is this immersive. You go into this big room and like sit in these beach chairs, and all of the walls are just projected his different pictures and his image. But he had so many quotes about nature in there that, you know, like a lot of his famous paintings from Starry Night to like The Pathway is all about nature. And he had this quote, and I'm going to completely paraphrase it, but that if you can look to nature, you'll never be short of beauty in your life. And it's like, when we look at all the things that we're trying to do, right? We're trying to build strength. We're trying to build physical, mental strength and stuff. We're all looking to find that beauty in life and that joy in life. So being outdoors and being in that environment, and you can see like, and he was such a genius of showing that through his painting, but it's like, we can all do that. So the negative space of what I was talking about was just like in between your sets and reps. I said, like, you know, how long does a workout take? Well, if you're working out for 20 minutes, how much time is the bar or the bell actually in your hand during that time? It might be 6 or 7. Right. So you have a bigger relationship actually with the negative space than you do actually working out. Put that focus into it and see what's around you. And it's probably going to give you a lot more joy in your day.
Right. I love thinking about that, or even with my training being generally very concise when it needs to be or when I choose to be. And then it's very playful and not so time oriented, or, you know, no sets and reps on the clock kind of thing too. But thinking about that and I've used that many times in coaching too. Like, we're doing 7 minutes of actual work here, guys. And you have a lot of that, you know, I didn't call it negative space so much then, but just, you have a lot of downtime, a lot of time between here. We're really, you know, and to kind of kick that back into gear, be a little bit more of that driven side of me too. Like, this is very doable, or, you know, just the total time blocked out to train or whatever that may be. It's not hard to do. That's, you know, where I'm at. I'll give you a quick summary too, is working on these skill sections and getting, like, my coach, Tom Benj, if people know who he is in the Strong First community. He's a great guy all around. He's a student of strength, and he's about 10 years my senior. So he's got 10 more years in the game. But we've been working a lot more on this, whatever you're kind of called it, the self-defense, tactical side of things, from everything from, you know, handgun training to just self-defense, home defense stuff. And then a lot of just skill work with collie sticks, if people are familiar with the collie sticks, and so the weaponry side of things, and then just boxing and some of the skill work too. But just looking at that, and he calls it salt and pepper, because he knows me well enough too. Like, I love a skill development thing, and I just set a timer, and I'm just going to work within that framework of time, and he'll give me some guidance there. So I just do so much better. And just to your point too, I know you always have a coach in your realm, and I always like to say, I make sure, you know, coaches need coaches still at every phase of the game, at least on a small level, where you have some checkpoints, you have some place to keep you out of your own way. And I tend to get very hyper focused on a goal in a critical area, rather than, and again, back to our point of enjoying that process, or just it becomes too loose, too feel good. So I think I can kind of relate maybe better than ever to just the average person in the fitness industry, average coach, of like to find that purposeful flow, that fun. You know, it has to check a lot of those boxes for it to be sustainable. I know we could go on and on, or we'll dig into that as far as we want to too, at those just adherence to what allows people, or what creates an environment, let's say, where they can be successful forever. You know, what's that like secret formula that really we know isn't so secret? It's just finding so many pieces that you enjoy. And, you know, again, back to the outdoors, if I can have that positive association, I'm not, you know, having to drive to a place, park, go into this creepy dungeon, or around people I don't want to be around, or just feel like that pressure. I felt this driven by a certain amount or a lot of inadequacy going into a regular gym, being what I felt like the weakest, skinniest guy in there. And it probably was when I first started weight training in, you know, high school and into early college. I was 6'2", 160, 165 pounds at most too. And, you know, now people call me skinny still at 210. It's just like never enough. It's all relative to person, and it's changed so much. There's a lot less of this big meathead bodybuilding side. I think all of the other inspirations from Strong First, CrossFit, these more normal athletic builds, which I love to see. And that's what I insist on myself training and the people I work with, unless I'm choosing to do, which I just don't have that interest of just going and pumping and burning, doing curls, doing, like, let's build my biceps today. Like, that's what got me into this to a greater extent. And now it's just, that doesn't fuel me. I've got off that bus, got off that crazy train, and I keep taking the next bus out to, the next vehicle to drive in the same direction, maybe to use that analogy or continue that analogy.
Yeah, it's so, I'm like, I feel so foreign and distant to that world anymore of the curls in the rack and 3 sets of 8 and all that stuff, just because what I do, how I coach the people that I've connected with so much. But, that term that first, I'm going to ask you more about the Kali sticks, because I'm really interested in those, which I think is interesting. But that term that we use a lot is like carryover, like, oh, your strength training should carry over into this. And it seems like it's one of those things that we say. It sounds like a really cool thing to tell somebody that you're trying to sell into a fitness program. But in order to do that, you need to go practice those other things that you're trying to carry it over to, right? So it's like even something like hiking or so. And I know, you've been hunting, you've done all the work in the Highland Games, the last podcast that we did with you a while ago, when you talked all about your Highland Games days and the stone lifting days, which is still so fascinating to me of that world in there. But it's like, how important do you think is it for people to get out of their own kind of comfortable environment and train in other areas? Maybe it's not like something you have to do all the time, but even just a little bit. Like, I know you've had a lot of experience, with that. Can you talk a little bit about just training in different environments, specifically different weather patterns as well?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. There's I forget the exact quote that I just said to you before the podcast. It sounded so in line and more of my, driven side of not being soft and weak and all that too, is from Bill Bowerman talking about the weather and I forget, the details, but toughening up to that. So there's a certain amount of that. And I love that All Weather Strong. I was inspired by, I don't know if people are familiar with Scott Carney and his work, What Doesn't Kill Us. That was a big platform, and then exposed to all the Wim Hof craze and kind of certain amount of craziness, and just adapted it, taken to make it my own. I'm still a fan of all of their work and what Wim Hof's doing. I just have taken it and, made my own version of that, where I'm not quite on that spectrum of things, I guess you could say. But I love the challenge of the all weather and adapting, to that. There's plenty of science that shows there's benefits to that. And also you have to consider what is safe and effective. If I'm just going out and just freezing my ass off, shivering, the bell's cold, and I'm going, let's say I'm competing in the tactical strength challenge or getting ready for a Strong First certification, something like that, I'm not going to do as much of that. That's going to fit in a smaller box, or maybe I'll just go out and do my last little part of my training or part of my kind of warm up, or after the warm up. I have all of my clients have had my space out here now on our yard here has about 5.5 acres, and you just generally don't see another house or hear anyone else out here too. So you can be on bare feet on the grass. It's nice enough ground where it's level. And I just insist on pretty much getting their bare feet, or at least something where they're touching the actual ground. And just there's layers to the space where they can be just outside in the sun a little bit. I mean, again, we can go on and on about all the different benefits, and it generally gets pretty good sun where we are there, down by the gym, and just all the layers we can add to those benefits. And even if we don't have all the science to it, it makes so much sense. And in so many ways, I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to just like, I need to see all the research come out on this. I know that it's effective. I know it intuitively, and people have more of a positive association if there's something in nature. Or between our sets and reps, I'll go out and look at, especially being a hunter now, I pay attention to things a lot more as in wildlife and different terrain, and how I would hike in, how I would spot the animal, and how I would come in. I could think about that from my deck right here and look, okay, there's a deer down there. How would I go in and stalk that animal? It's so fascinating. And again, I could go off about hunting and nature, but in a simple sense, the hunting side really makes me, or has allowed me, to pay more attention and make more of a connection with nature. So I feel much more in tune with nature and able to honor the animal, honor the whole process, and get connected. But it can take on a lot of different forms, and I don't care, to a point, if people are all layered up, and I can't help but joke around. Like, you see, this time of year, you can tell people who are not from our area. I'm in Bend, Oregon, so we're at about almost 4,000 feet of elevation, and the weather can be just all over the place. Like yesterday, I was up at the Hoodoo Mountain, which is not that much higher than us too, but at the top, when you go up the lift, the weather changes. It was raining over there. It was just about 40 degrees, and I was doing a bow 3D target shoot, kind of a informal competition thing too. But you just have to be ready to roll with all the different layers. So I'm a big gear guy now too. I've finally invested in all my gear. I love the minimalist, like, go out, practically naked and get your workout in and tough into that, or I call it just body tempering in a different way. And I love to do that in the fall, by the way. I can give some hopefully actionable things. I like the start in the summer and go into the fall. So it'd be perfect for people start now, because guess what? Each day on average, it's going to get a little bit colder. It's going to get a little bit more challenging. So nature is doing its own little progressive overload, or these little micro adjustments in there too. So you do toughen up, depending on where you live. If you're in Hawaii, probably you're not going to notice much. If you're in Alaska, like some of my friends up there, I just got back from a hunting and fishing kind of all around trip. Like,
oh wow,
the weather up there was 80 degrees. We haven't had an 80 degree here, so you just never know what you're going to get. And as you know, it's a certain amount of novelty, connection, and just adapting, and just problem solving, and hunting again has just been so much of that for me. You're always rolling with the punches. You're trying to stay along a safe track, as in not getting literally too far out in nature or getting mauled by a bear, but all the things, just it's some little problem solving in there. And I think just realizing how little we have control over the world, how little we really can make these transitions. There's controlling what we can and being intentional, but also being playful, and just that's part of I think another layer of whatever we want to call that, functional. I like just the term useful, because I think functional, or kind of like core training, it's just, what does that really mean? It's just become like a generic term, like marketing term, right?
Well, that's a good point. It's like, because functional or core strength, like, we can have debates about exactly what it means. Useful strength. Okay, we pretty much know what the term useful is. I think we can kind of have a universal agreement on that. But what you mentioned there about kind of the weather and the unpredictability of it, I think I'm so curious to see how much of an impact that really makes into the overall experience of getting into strength training, kind of tying in like the negative space, all that type of focus. But I remember I had Dr. Tiffany Jones on the podcast a short while ago. She's a mindset counselor for elite athletes, USA Hockey, USA Gymnastics. And she would talk about the gymnastics team, which that's a sport which is all about the routine. Like, you're practicing the same moves at the same spot of the beam or the mat in a very controlled environment. And they're practicing with no crowd at all. So it could be, you can hear a hairpin with that. And all of a sudden, when they would get the routine down, she would talk about screaming at them like they were just in the, a drunken person in the stands, or start throwing on Slipknot and just putting it to as loud as possible in the middle of the girls, balance beam. And she's like, you just can't predict everything. If you try and control everything, then if anything goes off, then you're going to be out of your routine, and then things could just start slipping down. And it seems like hunting kind of hunting, especially out in nature, it seems like it's the same lesson, because nature doesn't care about who you are or what you do or what your social status is. It can throw weather on you in 2 seconds, or all of a sudden a bear is by you. And I can't even imagine what you would do at that moment. But I mean, it's like, you don't have to go into these extreme circumstances in order to get this. Like, you can put these things into your own training by getting outside or changing the environment a little bit. And that might actually do so much more for you, not just on the physical side, but also on the mental side and this mental connection of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so many gems in there for sure, from those challenges in your own gym environment, or stepping out, like I said, hopefully some actionable things there too, to do their warm up, do some part of it, try to spend, I like to minimum of like 5 minutes associated with that. And maybe it's a morning. Like I started, I don't even know how long ago now, about 7-8 years ago. Every day I will get up first thing in the morning and do something with barefoot, minimal clothes on, and go out. And sometimes it's the snow on the ground, and I'll be out about 3 minutes and my feet are cold and I'm busting inside, or I'll come in, take a break, and then go back out again too. Mm-hmm. But I want to know, like, something in me, and I don't know if this is everyone or just something that I've always had growing up, partially in the country and being very in tune with nature and having very nature oriented. My dad was a Parks and Recreation director. My mom I call her Mother Nature, because she's always noticing all the little things. She's become a fan or appreciates me hunting, but we didn't grow up, around that. She's much more like, oh, don't kill any animals. Why would we do that? But noticing that, having that gift as a youth, just came more of a connection, I guess, for me. But having been in both worlds, I just intuitively sought out living, like when I was finishing up my undergrad stuff, living in the heart of San Diego. I felt quite claustrophobic. I felt quite a bigger deal of stress. So I would always seek out the green space, at least the parks nearby, someplace. I think we all have a version of that. And I guess I'm okay. It's something that's so deep in me that I can relate to, that I see it as a positive thing. And back then it's like, I should be enjoying this, or I don't need all this. This is the way of the world, or this is why am I struggling so much to be in this concrete jungle? But now reading more validation, talking to more people, I know we're coming around to that, or like I've been calling it the great divide of people who are just so sucked into that world and seeing that in our youth. I know we want to talk about that a little bit too, but all of the challenges, negatives, or the disconnect from our bodies, our sense of nature. And I guess my point I was going to make is, I know when I've been outside for a little bit, I just have a different kind of sensory wavelength, and I literally know what's going on in the world. It's kind of this Zen Mother Nature feel. And I know, I don't know, kind of how to dress for the day. I'm checking out the clouds. And again, maybe that's that. I know it's benefiting me as a hunter too, to be aware of all those things. And you start to see and feel, it's like kind of this matrix effect of everything just kind of slows down and separates the layers out. I don't know if that sounds too far out there.
No, I think it's right on point. Do you see a change with people that you've worked with who have gone through the path that you have, like with your with your area and your acres there? Like, are people who have been more like in that confined zone and then they get out in nature, do you see a change with them pretty quickly, or are they resistant at all of kind of getting outside and getting, I guess, their feet dirty a bit in the outdoors?
We talk about it ahead of time. They've usually seen or heard what I do a little bit, so we've pre-framed it. It depends on the person a little bit, or the middle of winter. If I'm not excited about it, I don't just make it a thing right away. I don't kind of pre-qualify and sit there kind of spinning my tail explaining to. If I just take it just like anything else, for me to have more of an invitation to it, instead of we're doing this and fill them with all those whys, just to make it fun and approachable. It definitely works with kids too, to bring that out and think of the positives, exploring and give them some layers. Like I say, at least we go out, we have some mats down, and that tends to be warmer and more, if they're not used to getting out barefoot on grass. Like, I prefer now, like, if I don't have to wear shoes, and I've only had one incident, and we've been here for 2 years now, where I stepped on a root had cut off, and I did mildly impaled my foot. That's not bad for all of the creepy crawlies and everything else that's out here. You definitely, I hate to say toughen up your feet too much. You definitely pay way more attention, and your feet do get a little bit tougher. But yeah, so they get that. And maybe the biggest takeaway, sorry, there's a plane going overhead now as soon as I start going on again, is that they feel, my space, I call the sanctuary of strength. So love it. Framing it with this sanctuary feel and the the logo is this tree, and I really focused on the roots of the tree, and again, the connection with nature. And Empowered Strength is our parent brand for everything we're doing, and my old brick and mortar gym space there too. But to use that term empowering, or use strength training as an empowering way for them to do their own, especially during the early days of the pandemic, it just made so much sense to be, okay, you can get a kettlebell, you can get a sandbag or these minimal tools that I like, low cost, low barrier. And where do you have 4 walls, and you have a space probably outside of your door in most cases, and shared some examples of me living in a tiny little studio in the early part of the pandemic. Talk about delayed gratification to have this space now.
Yeah, really.
I was living in a tiny space during the early days, and we had planned on doing, this was part of the plan, but I was stuck in that space. So training in there, and I could go right outside my back door, and there was no, an open little green space at this little apartment complex that I was in. So I just adapted to that. And I think you mentioned that earlier today too. Like, okay, maybe I could take my kettlebells outside and do this. And then they just realized, like, oh, this is enjoyable. And maybe I don't even care. My neighbor might look at me weird or ask what I'm doing. Like, I just say good to that now. Like, then I get a chance to just quietly do what I'm doing. If I can share and they want to hear more, that's great too. Kind of like just being brave and going in the airport, doing some stretching movement, whatever. Like 5-10 years ago, I would have been like, oh, I don't want to, this just looks showy. People think this is weird. And now, like, I know I'm doing the right stuff, and I'm just being me, or my clients, I think, can just see, hear, smell, taste that in me. Like, well, I can do that too. It's not that far-fetched or whatever. This can be the norm. This is how we're wired to do things, not to be confined, go from one comfort bubble to the next comfort bubble in our cars and all the stuff, to go out. And there's always some kind of green space that we can have. And there's the research is coming on that too. Like, maybe it's just as simple as staring at a tree, or having a tree in the courtyard, or maybe in your own area, like, we'll put out, flower pots or something like that, that have something there. And I'm getting sun, I'm getting connection with whatever the weather's doing. There's always ways to layer up and down. And again, I think that goes back to that creative problem solving a little bit too. Yeah. And then you have permission, to train inside, or maybe you dabble and do a little walk, or there's some way. Again, hopefully it's a morning routine. I just can't say enough of how that's just like brushing my teeth now. It's so natural to be in nature, right? I crave that. And I know I'm refilling my cup, where I literally feel like a solar panel right here, just soaking up some of the rays. And then I can go inside, and it's a lot easier to I hate to say want to be inside, but I can tolerate the indoors a lot more that way. So anyways, that's,
it's funny. I, just a few weeks ago, I changed my morning routine up. I'm good with my writing, and I do my breath work, meditation, all that good stuff. But I just felt like I needed something different, especially since it's nice out in New York, and was looking at some stuff, and I just got outside first thing in the morning, just like you do, like just throw on some flip-flops, as minimal clothing as possible as the weather permits, and just like a 10-minute walk around the neighborhood. And what I found was so interesting is, my parents have a home in Aruba that they live half the year in.
Oh, and cool.
When I go down and visit them, one of my favorite times there is the morning, because everybody usually sleeps in, and I'm an early bird. So like that 7 o'clock in the morning, I get up, make some coffee, and then just go outside. And like, if you've ever been in the Caribbean, that air that just hits your face, it's like a warm hug. It just feels so good. And I remember thinking of that, like, it's just this stress-free type feeling of just being out in that environment. And I was like, oh, like, and you think in your head, oh, I wish I had this all year round, thinking that it's like something special only on that island that it gets. And after just getting out a couple of days in the morning, and it's 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock when I wake up, it's early, nobody's really out, I had that same feeling of the wind hit my face. And I was like, oh, I got that same feeling that I did when I was on a vacation in Aruba. And so many times we think that, like, when we're in certain spots, that's the only place that we can feel those things, when in reality, we can probably duplicate that just outside the door of our own home and get that same feeling of just being outside. And it doesn't need to be long. Like you said, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, just get outside, and it just kind of sets you up for the day just building it up. I think it is. It's so, it's such an important thing of getting outside, you know, with that. But I know also, I mean, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, John, is now, I mean, you're not old by any means, but you're over 40 now in your training. You've done a lot of high level strength work, especially early on, but still continue to keep that peak level of strength. How has your training alone evolved as you've gone through, you know, just kind of getting from your 30s, your, you know, late 30s now into your 40s? How has it changed from what you've did early on when you were, competing early, in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to go there. And as a Scottish Highland Games athlete, if people don't know what the games are, it's basically like a decathlon of all the throwing events. So it truly is as I would say, as pure as of any sport that has that power. And you touched on like gymnastics, and I've really enjoyed worked with a lot of gymnastics athletes over the years too. And it's very similar to that, the way there's very predictable constraints, right? You have the same weight, you have the same basic handle, general conditions, but then there are so many other variables in that too, with what the weather's doing, what the crowd's doing, what all those things are doing. So with that specifically, or in general, it's a lot more between the lines, enjoying that negative space, thinking about those things that may peak my performance and or help my students, coaching a lot of other athletes. I get to, in a healthy way, live vicariously through them. My wife has taken the journey of the Highland Games into her 40s. So seeing her as this petite lady that did not have any throwing background, thankfully she's very athletic. She's trained with Bell. She's trained with me for many years. So she's got a really good strength base. But for me specifically, it's a lot less of the heavy grind work, or for her or any masters athletes, a lot more, how can we have this really intentional, we've put a lot of thought, we want to err on the side of caution, if you want to say that, or undertrain and develop those skills. Keep it fun, refreshing, realize that life is happening around all that stuff. There's kids, there's other things, to not take it too seriously, but now having more of the time, or the money to have the space and all the equipment, I have none of those barriers, where earlier it was like, I don't have all the implements. I got to save up and buy these implements, or I got to go train an hour away. And, again, if you want to do something, you're going to find a way, that creative space, that obsessive space, whatever level of continuum of healthy commitment to something. And I do have that. I know that drive is still really there, and something for me to manage and check in with my body a lot more. Like even this morning training, I was feeling some upper neck, kind of that extra level of tension on that edge of a kind of that yellow light, red light thing that said, I'm not going to double bell press for, 20 some reps right now. That's not going to help this cause. So I'm going to modify this. I'm going to kind of weave in some of this creative side of doing some single bell work. I knew that would be a lot better tolerated. I was able to dabble and go to the next heavier bell, which just seems daunting to do double bells right now with 36 kilos for this whole series of chains. And I know that that's insanely strong by many standards in our industry, but I'm like, I've done this, I've been at this a long time. I've been I've earned that strength for a long time. So kind of just weaving that in. And then I did a few sets once I got moving a little bit better with the double bell. So staying away from those, I just see those injuries, flare-ups, just let's call them the setbacks too. I see them, maybe not a mile away, but I know when something's coming now. And injury doesn't just happen by, I blew my whatever out. Like something was already there, or my training was off for a while. I wasn't really listening to my body, whatever you want to say in there too. So it's much more of that stuff. And it's controlling the volume a little bit of the amount of work I'm doing, especially in the gym. It's much more skill oriented, or I will be literally throwing a tire, pick up a tire and bring in the same mechanics essentially to what I'm doing with the actual implement. So I'm not always throwing the same implement. So it's a certain novelty, or whatever you want to call it. It's a unique thing that I'm moving around with. It still feeds the greater greater purpose, or I like that term we use in Strong for sometimes, that dominata, that dominant effort. We're still feeding that dominant effort, but I'm having more fun with it. And I also don't, whatever random tire, I don't know what a good throw is with that. I don't have the objective number where I take out the tape measure, I pick up the bells, whatever. I know unless somebody hands me the bells and I can't see, I'm blinded to that. I know what's good, or I have an expectation, or I have something I'm creating a story about that I should be able to do, where I did this before. Why can't I do this again? But it's a fresh new space. I think it really feeds my brain, and it still works towards the greater purpose there.
Right.
So
do you find that like now just training, like it always seems like people think that you can't, as you go on in life, we need to lower intensity, but we can keep the volume up? Where I just found, it seems like I work better, now, and I'm in my late 30s now from what it was in the 20s. I'm much better now in low volume based training, but keeping the intensity at a higher level, versus, so intensity still feels really good. And I think that's really important, especially as we go. But it seems like volume is something that could change a little bit quicker as you go from maybe like your 20s into your 30s. And again, I mean, neither of us are, are old men, here. It's like, there's plenty of stuff you can do in your 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond. I've met those people. So have you, but it does seem like volume is even more important as we go through our training days.
Yeah, that's actually great. I'll touch on that a little bit too. I love the intensity and the high skill. So I definitely think this working towards a high skill should or can definitely be the focus of training. But I'm an intensity guy too. Even when I was down training, I'm like, how can I faster? Like, can I go heavier and kind of trim off some of that stuff? So I'm sticking to the plan. I'm speaking of our friend, I think he's maybe been on your podcast, John Parker. I love John. I really enjoy the base of the program. And again, I'm sticking to it. I'm kind of one of his higher level beta testers. So I honor him. But again, I'm my brain's kind of thinking through some of, how can I, or for the next round of this, how can I modify it? But it's really crisp and refreshing. But for me, doing sets of 5, so this is a set of 5. So one clean, one strict press or push press, depending on the day. And then either a squat that you drop into very quick negative from overhead, or it's dropping into the rack and then doing a still intentional squat. And for five of those chains, so it's 1 1 1 1 1 1. So you're doing 5 squats, 5 cleans, 5 presses, all under that tension. So that part of me, when I first started, just blew my mind. Like my brain's like, the set should be over now, or what's going on? But then you tap in, you find that groove, and at most it's 5. So it's a lot of ladder, different ways of laddering up, if people are familiar with ladders. So it's not always a set to 5, but it's got some nice peaks and flow. So that rhythm feels really nice. And that's my, whatever you want to call it, kind of manly cardio or humane in a way, but it mentally is very taxing to think like, man, I'm tired after the 3rd rep or round here. Okay. But I did 5 last week, and I know it's there. I just have to kind of almost relax into, find that flow, pause for a second, and find that rhythm again, rather than just gutting out those reps. So it fits a lot of good things. I highly recommend people get into, or if they haven't done some of the kettlebell chains and double bell work. It's a nice, somebody who's so used to grinding away on the barbell. I always say that too, like, get some heavy enough bells in your hand. You're going to get really strong. You're going to stay really strong. You're going to work on skills you never thought. It's not just, not to go off on that too far, but I know you talk a lot about kettlebell training in your other podcasts, but specifically, it's so easy for people to just take it as this afterthought. Like, I do some swings at the end of my workout, and they're usually either way too heavy, way too light. They're done poorly. I did 2 sets of 20. Yeah. Kettlebells are okay. Like, have you actually ran a full program? Have you followed a plan with, again, double bell work or something like simple and sinister? I'm always just throwing out those foundational pieces. And I've done simple and sinister myself for like 12-week blocks in my off season, many years in a row. I did it until I completed sinister, and I kind of checked that box officially. And I said, I don't know.
I'm done with this.
I'm kind of done with get-ups.
I'm never doing a get-up ever again in my life over 32K. Yeah.
Go on about that, but I'll do other variations. Again, I trick my brain a little bit. I'm doing different windmill variations. I'm doing like half get-ups. I'm doing, I call it around the world get-up, where I have sandbag I'm moving around with. So I'm just changing the tool a little bit. I'm still always doing some kind of get-up movement transition, but to have that heavy bell, or to feel like continuing to go, at that high intensity, to your point again too, with a 48 kilo plus, like it just gets mentally and physically tiring to have that weight over your head and stabilizing.
Oh yeah. I've talked with people about the get up on that, because I was doing sinister training last year and then took a break, mostly because my body was just pushing back on me, because at 165 pounds, I have these small little forearms here that holding that bell. Yeah. I mean, it was fatiguing. I mean, it's tough training, but it physically hurt. Like it was actually like not feeling good. And, to do and I'll get back to it at some point, because it is a box I'm going to check off, in my list of strength tasks to do. Yeah. But like things like, get-ups, which I think are great, but you don't need to go that heavy. That's where I'm finding with a lot of people. It's like, it's a fun thing to do, to push, but is it going to get you stronger? I found if you get into some chains and complexes, and like anybody who wants to talk about kettlebells, can they get you big and strong? Go look at Geoff Neupert's work from a million years ago in complexes. Yeah. And I've seen the work that John's done with the minimum effective dose chains. And I've seen the work that you do. And it's such a simple type thing. Again, I think it comes back to, you can keep the intensity up, the volume. That's the thing that can vary. So it really can be for anybody, but that over speed squat is something that is definitely different in there. But I've seen the work that you guys are doing, and I'm curious to look at that, more of the results that you guys are getting over the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to share along the way. And that, what the hell effect is very true. I'm finding that with the rest of my training and keeping body fat down and seeing all that progress come back alive, and doing it pain-free too. I've had my share of setbacks over the years, from low back pain to, like I mentioned, my shoulders, and sometimes combining the lifting, to back to your original kind of question point. It's definitely, for the most part, throwing out those heavy lifts. I will cycle in, like right now, I do have an incline barbell press. I wanted to get back to that, or see if I could overcome that, because there's so many years I could not, where I told myself, there's just no way I cannot bench press. I every time I bench press, I hurt my shoulder, blah, blah, blah. So overcoming that, I did that years ago with the deadlift too. I deconstructed it. I reconstructed the technique, all the other restorative, reset, FMS type of movements, all the stuff along there, got my body really tuned up, and I was able to overcome that. I can deadlift. I choose generally not to deadlift heavy, or not to get too far down that barbell world. And the same thing with the bench press. I just wanted to bring that back and kind of see where I could work to, and see if it would transition into my throwing a little. I'm not having a big, I call myself, semi-retired from the games. I'm going to sneak in and do a couple smaller competitions later in the season to kind of check that out.
just scratch the itch and then just move it on.
Yeah, I could punch my tickets strategically for Masters, World Championships. They were just this last weekend. So I essentially lost my title. It was a little harder to see that. And that kind of fires you up again too, because I didn't go defend my title, which I had planned to do, and I'm totally okay with, but it does get you, fired up to go back sort of on the battlefield that way, in a sense. And it is much more the intentional. I could go on and on about the power training stuff if we want to go there too, but very power oriented, from sprinting to done a lot of work with my good friend Franz Schneidman. Great coach, great guy who works with a lot of 40 plus guys. I think Franz is even 50, 49, 50-ish now.
He looks like 32.
Yeah, right. And the fountain of youth is that, to what you were saying too, done in the right, not going hard into sprinting, but we do a lot of marching drills, or some of the articles I put out too. How do we work into sprinting again? And, or, it may not be someone who's 300 pounds may not be sprinting. They're just going to be marching and doing some other lower, I say lower intensity, lower impact stuff, but once you get there and you find your ideal body type, body weight, and you put some more, keep it familiar, it's going to stay there. And you just, that minimally effective dose of sprinting, whatever you want to call that too, or throwing. I could go on and on about why everybody should throw. I have another article coming up on that too. I'll just add that in there through OSA on throwing. Everyone can and should. It's a useful tool. It's an athletic thing. Even if you never throw anything, we're basically throwing kettlebells the way I look at it when we do a snatch. If that doesn't feel like you're about to release the bell when it's floating in here, or a float of a kettlebell swing, just trust me, if you're not doing that stuff, it very much feels like my weight. We throw a weight over a bar, which is essentially like a kettlebell over a bar. And it's very, very similar to that. Yeah. That way too. So if I can make it feel like throwing, if I can make my gym stuff or transition my gym stuff into what feels like a thrower. And that's the research is clear on that too. Pavel talks a lot about that, like in the book, The Quick and the Dead, which I'm kind of baffled why that hasn't caught on more, why people aren't constantly talking about power training, but I guess it just gives me more of an outlet, more of a place. And my next program coming out is called Crash Proof Superpowered. So it's like that superpower that you can take and build on or utilize, or it's something that, tends to go away. And we need to have a durable, solid, stable foundation before we go and do a lot of that stuff. So navigating that with older adults is something I've spent so much time and energy on, and working with other good coaches like Franz to put some parameters on that so people can do it safely and effectively, just like jump training or box jumps. I think that is unethical, and you deserve to be imprisoned if you hurt somebody the first day in the gym doing like high box jumps or something like that. So I don't know, just distilling that stuff.
Plyos for days. Yeah. Well, I think it kind of goes on what we were mentioning a little bit before the podcast of that difference between becoming fit and staying fit, and I think it's, especially in the fitness industry, it seems like so much stuff, especially marketing messages, are skewed towards the people to become fit, the people who are on the couch or trying to get into something, because it's an easy message to deliver. Staying fit, a lot of times I think it could be misconstrued as just do the same things that you've done to get to become fit. But in reality, what you're talking about here, John, like with competition and doing a competition, I had Danny Casey, who is the owner of the New York Weightlifting Academy and does a lot of Olympic lifting challenges. And he was saying how he encourages everybody in the gym, regardless of his elite athletes or brand new people, to get into a competition just because of that. There's something to that deadline that like, it doesn't care what you feel like, you have to go up there and show up and get in there. And it reminded me of a time when we hosted a tactical strength challenge here when we had the studio, and we just put it up for our members, not thinking many people were going to jump in. And we had like 25 people in this small 1,000 square foot space going in. And, I think like 20 out of like 21 people PR'd their deadlift that day. Like, I mean, the energy of that is so crazy. And I think that's a part of the staying fit that we don't talk about, of like that continuous progression. And it seems like we kind of talked about that great divide, especially of like even young kids right now and stuff, and kind of they have a fear and almost like an apathy towards building into their bodies. It seems like if we put this message out of like staying fit is more just this continuous progression and throwing them into some things like competitions and stuff, that seems like it might be a good segue to help this demographic more than just the people who are trying to get, started at the starting point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That resonates a lot with me. We did, starting in 2015, we ran the TSC religiously every time until COVID, we actually had, I think it was during the early days of COVID, we still had, and we combined with other gyms or my brothers and sisters, people that worked for me over the years too, will still congregate together and host the TSC. So I'm 100% on board with that, or some form of competition. We always had the TSC built into it. We just had our testing standards, or we try to wrap it into a challenge. So members would come in and get this sense of camaraderie competition on at least 6-month basis, if not we'd do it every 3 months. So it was a quarterly thing. And we would ask them to show up and kind of face the music and do this testing. And guess what? You'd have some people that would be like, oh, I'm sick that week, or, oh, I guess I can't make it. And I wanted to be really firm. I'm like, well, okay, you're going to make it up the next week afterwards, or we need to see where you are with this. It's so helpful for our coaches too. And to what you're saying, a lot of time you just keep showing up, and that's kind of sneaky strength stuff shows up on game day too. It's amazing how that repetitive, consistent effort, quality effort, you have more than you probably think in that tank. And I'm a huge fan of competing and just whatever, it's cliche, but getting people out of their comfort zone and not necessarily getting a participation trophy. I'm going nuts with that sometimes, the way specifically in my sport in the Highland Games and through, it's like we're just rewarding people for showing up and giving them so much gratification that I don't think they earned a lot of the time in our world. Like, what if it is challenging? What if you don't make the team? All those adversity things definitely toughened me up and gave me my edges. Of course, there's times when a coach or somebody could have been a little bit of that kindness and that understanding, like, hey, you are talented. You can do this. If my Highland Games coach was like, hell yeah, you're going to be a great thrower. You just keep showing up and doing it. I rarely got that stuff. So I'm not saying, or for me too, I don't want to be just a total slave driver, hard ass. You're not getting anything out of me for compliments, but it's really earning that. I think my students and even my wife, when I coach her, she knows she's going to get me, the authentic me. And I don't think I need it. For a long time, I was like, oh, I need to soften this, or people think I'm just such a slave driver or so intense. And it's fine. That's not my people now. And expanding into the online realms and the pandemic kind of hustle shift that we all did in one way or another. Anybody in the fitness industry, if you didn't have some concerns and didn't change some things, you probably aren't in the industry, or you're just totally lying right now too. If you're lying to yourself, if nothing else, that you felt some of that. So that was definitely my opportunity to say, okay, these are my non-negotiables, or this is what I expect. And to really pre-qualify, I hate to say it's a form of pre-judging too. I'm really putting a certain expectation, looking at the parameters from what somebody's lifestyle looks like, how busy they are already, how many injuries they have. I really have to pre-filter those. And that doesn't mean, and I'll always give them some other options or suggestions of where to go, who to go to too. But I want to make sure I'm not spinning my wheels with that. Right. As a maybe more impatient, old crotchety coach that's been doing this for 20 years. I think I have that right to feel that way now too.
Right. Well, I think, when you know what it takes to step up through a competition, that's why I think maybe the strength world is a little bit behind the running world. The running world, like in track world, does this really well. There's a 5K anywhere in your area at any time. Right. And it's like, there is something to like that where you have to go and you see your time and you know what you posted. And if you're not running in between and you're looking to improve, it's going to tell you that number, right there. And it's funny because I've been known by some people now as like the intuitive guy, because I post about it all the time of intuitive training, and I love it. I think it's great. Yeah. But there's that piece where sometimes you still need to challenge yourself and push it. And I do those, you do those as well. And I think the strength, why I love the TSC so much. I mean, I've been a part of Strong First for a long time. I love the community, and I know it's, backed from them, but it was just that opportunity that every 6 months you had the chance to test yourself to see where you're at. And so just having those challenges, I think that could be a way to, get people out of just the humdrum of every day, going in. It's like, okay, you're actually training for something here. It's like every 3 months or so, throw out a challenge. John mentioned this a lot. Like every year, just goes to a camp and just shuts down. As a student, you immerse yourself for, a few days just to get that kind of scratch that itch of that competition and going in. And I think if more people embrace that in their studios and their gyms and stuff like that, I think that could be a good challenge. That could be a good challenge. And it because everybody's competitive in some way, right? It's like, maybe you're not ultra competitive and you're going to go against the best of the best, but when you did better than you did last time. Like that's competition right there. And I think if we do that more as a strength world, I think that might be a good avenue to help a lot more people.
Right. Yeah. I built my gym on that foundation too. And it just makes so much sense. And when somebody, again, when they come in and say, I just want to get strong, I just want to, whatever, I want to be healthy. Well, sorry, we need to expand on that. If we can't go from the outset here working together, for example, we need something more on the line there as far as throughout those phases, like you're saying too. And I know that I'm coming mostly out of the Highland Games and no question, no problem transitioning into these other challenges for me, again, more in the hunting side of things and the tactical training, all these other skill pieces. I call it just going into the woodshed, just quietly doing that without necessarily sharing. I don't share really much of any of that side of things on my social media, but I will. I've saved some of those old videos. I'll give people that little preview down the road. Wait till next summer. I'm going to be digging into that, just like I did immersion into the Highland Games, immersion into my business, immersion into my marriage. Like I leave, no stone unturned, so to speak, when I get determined. And I love that people see that in me too, and get inspired or realize, hey, watch out. He's going to be good at this. He picked up a bow. He's not just going to be good. He's going to be great at this. Or he'll say, hey, I'm totally fine being good enough. I can proficiently hunt with this thing or pull this thing back and not shoot my eye out, kind of thing, to just decide where that is. And again, for me, there's just so much to learn. If people stay hungry with that awareness to learn, maybe for some takeaways here too, that learning another skill and then using the gym to feed that, or if the coach, and very true for youth too, if we can make an association with, oh, this is going to help you when you're running or when you're doing these other sports or activities. You're going to have a body that you feel you fit in your clothes really well, and you feel strong all day long. You're going to have more energy, carry, and whatever. If I can find that, or I'm always looking for that piece that feeds that person, whether they're 8 or 88. That's all that matters. Like I at the same time, as much as I'm really narrow on who I want to work with, all they have to do is have the right mindset and the right willingness to put in those tools. I don't care. I just want to see people making progress, and then having that just like blow up in all these other cool ways that they were not expecting to see. And I think that's really possible. I think that's really doable, but there's a lot in our way. And I know we don't want to take up the whole rest of our time, but there's a lot of excuses, programming, things in our world, the busy being busy, as I like to say, that gets so stuck on these pieces where, starting now and taking this, you will not regret that in 6 months, a year, 5 years. No one regrets that quality work under ideally a quality coach, unless they get injured or do something usually stupid. Like I said earlier, I know I own my injuries when I flare something up. I know something was there, and I think we can all do a version of that too. And I'm sure you have your own same kind of ownership over that too.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like, all these things leave clues, right? I think that's probably the gift of being an older athlete and doing this for a long time is the flags when they pop up a lot faster, and when to, and your ego can keep driving you through, and you can just bring that injury all the way, to the full front, or you can stop, and you can do that. We'll probably have to do a whole nother podcast on the busy being busy, because that's something that we can really dive into. But what you mentioned there, John, of the, kind of the correlating the good things to the person's life on that, I think is so huge. That's the thing. Like, I don't think there's a debate that anybody can have anymore that strength training and being active is going to better yourself. So we all know we should do it, and we start shooting all over ourselves. But when you're right, you can actually correlate it to something that's important to that person's life. And like, then all of a sudden now you're making actually something very individual to the person. Like, oh, if you need to, you need to drink more water, or you need to get more sleep, or whatever it is. It's like, well, yeah, we all know we need to do those things, but if it's going to benefit a youth kid, if it's going to benefit them in the sport, or as an aging adult who is trying to improve their recall and their memory by getting more sleep, it's going to improve your memory. You correlate it together. Now, all of a sudden they have an actual message behind it. So I think that's where, as coaches, I think we can always look to do better on that. That's why I think of it as a practice, not a gym or not a space or whatever it is. It's, we're constantly learning, and everybody's completely different in their own goals. So if you correlate it with what's important to them, then you can find the path, and you can, shoot the bow into what's exactly important to them.
Yeah. The power of why, the why and the passion and the purpose, it fits all into that. And I think you just have to have it. If you can stumble into it for a couple months, and that's where, to what you said earlier too, about staying there, staying in the driver's seat, and finding the wins in there, and sometimes embracing the grind, sometimes finding that just flow in the somewhat of monotony too. That's like a mental muscle too, right? How do I be bored? How do I just be an adult about some of this? But I'm all for people finding a tool that works for them. And anybody who's not strength training currently, or not consistently doing it, I just think that's so bizarre nowadays. I think the culture is just, and the research is just so clear. It's like the opposite of being a smoker. Somebody who's a smoker nowadays, like, that there is nothing good about that. That is only breaking you down, hurting you. It's the same way. Like, if you're not strength training, there is so much you're leaving on the table. You're choosing weakness because it's not enough. I've seen that over and over again. People who don't strength train, who just do daily activities, or maybe even have a mildly physical job, they come in incredibly weak beyond the age of, like 15 now. It's insane. I mean, so many changes I saw in the clinical realm in the early 2000s, and the shift around the big technology boom and tracking with the smartphone usage. I mean, go on and on about this. I'm obsessed in those areas, but looking at, again, at technology as a tool, and not all the gloom and doom bad stuff, but just how weak, or I get people who come in for the first time. I had someone over the winter who's like, "Oh, I'm really strong already. I'm doing all these things. I don't think I need to be that much stronger. I just kind of want to get in shape and stuff." And we do some just baseline testing, from their breathing to their, it's all, layered in, right? If we're not breathing well, the rest of the system's not. I was like, just not that belief, that connection with what is strong. It was like, your body, our ancestors were a hell of a lot stronger than this. Like, we're wired for this. And to that point too, finding at least a place that they can reside in, meaning as simple as rucking, carrying a backpack, carrying a kettle, something where we're carrying. We could do a whole podcast, I think, on carries nowadays, or definitely combine on, programming and all these things. You need to be doing something. I hate to say the should word, but something where we're carrying something. I think everybody, talking about the perfect bridge. I can't remember who said this, where I read this, but the bridge between a runner and a pure strength power lifter is the carries, rucking, crawls, all that stuff in that realm. Yoke carry, at least get on under the yoke and carry that thing. If you're a badass power lifter, or you can't get away from the barbell completely, or carry, pick up a single arm suitcase carry. Can you carry 200 pounds without doing this? Yeah. Did I have a V8 kind of commercial back in the like that silly thing? How strong is your midline really? How can you really carry? Can you carry an elk out of the woods? Can you pack this animal out through a rough terrain? Like, that's just the ultimate for me. But there's a version of that for everybody. And to that last bit, something along the lines of kettlebells. I love the sandbags. And we combine it with the outdoors. It just doesn't have that gym. And I got away from that in my facility. It's so relatively small space. I think people do so much better, small space, outdoor space, where there's not all this gym energy, this box gym stuff. Maybe it's even like the Indian club, like an Indian club. Think about the early 1900s, 1800s, where the Indian club swinging became popular. Even with women, it was just such a extreme to think about actually lifting weights, where obviously people know the history. Anybody was a weirdo until the whatever, like 70s really, especially for women. So there's a gateway in that I think can lead to some other places. And I just think at least the kettlebell or two can go so far with people. I know you know, no question agree with that. We're come from the same cloth, but some tools, some space there, you know, maybe that take home message, there is a way, you know, there's a will, there's a way. And you really have to have at least a little bit of hands-on coaching. If you just completely like, oh, I'm going to do this perfect online program, unless you have some help along the way, there's just so much more you can gain from a few coaching sessions. And then maybe it is just a total, like it's called like in the woodshed training. You don't need to make a big deal, share it, whatever. And it's pretty cool to see how people come out when they do clock in and do the work. I do tend to work with guys in their 40s or 50s who are have been keeping up some baseline, but then they get excited and they just show up and keep doing the basic kettlebell work. And again, through the pandemic, that's put a positive spin on it. The accessibility of home gym equipment, the realization that people can do it at home, and again, the outdoor stuff that I think I've beat that drum for several years now and practice what I preach. I can't imagine going into a dark, dingy gym, or when I did in several places when I traveled over last year. I'm just like, I'll literally I'll just go out myself and go sprint or go do bodyweight things. Might be a nice gym at one of the hotels I'm staying at, and those treadmill things that people walk on, whatever. I'm like, I'm going to go outside. There's a green space right there. I'm just going to go outside and do my own thing. Like, that's how far removed I am from this stuffy, climate controlled gym environment. It feels so bizarre to me. So it is for everyone. I guess that's the point. If you're, not to shame people into doing it, but it gives back so much, and just keep showing up and finding that place. Just like my morning routine. It's just like, it goes from like, oh, I got to get up and I got to take this time to start out and get up a little earlier, to all of a sudden like, oh, you make those positive associations. And then on a day you, whatever, maybe wake up late, you're traveling. Oh, I'm missing out on that. You missed that time where you can't wait to go do it. That's when you know you're hooked, or as a coach, you know, you've hooked that client in the best possible way. They just see that it's transcending that life, that stage of change. They've just hit that level, or it just floats. They're not going to fall off too far. Well, and as you mentioned, like, even those days when you don't feel like doing it, it's like how quickly you're like 3 minutes away from feeling really good, you know? And it's like, the more you do it, the more you practice, it really is. It's such a simple thing. And I can't stress enough the outdoor training. I mean, the kettlebell training. I mean, that's why, honestly, I think that is probably the number one reason why I would recommend a kettlebell to anybody first. It's not just the systems that we've learned and we've implemented through Strong First, through amazing instructors, but just that you can take it outside to any small little patch of grass and just get in tune with it. And the term I use often, especially on this podcast and with, you know, all of my clientele, is joy. It's like finding some joy in your day and in your training. And it's just being appreciative and grateful for being able to move and just building your strength, I think, is just so powerful. And dude, John, I can't believe we've gone an hour and change already. It's from here. So we can talk. We're going to have to do the part 2 and keep this rolling. So dude, yeah, man, dude, so great connecting with you. You've got some new stuff coming out, I know. What's the best place that people can check out your stuff? You can also follow me on all my social media channels there. You can check out we're building a page. I think it maybe launched now, where all of the instructors for Original Strength OSI group, the institute there, where they can go on and read any of my old articles. I love when those things can live on, and people, even if they don't decide to do a program, at least hopefully fuel some thought, some change. And obviously, being on podcasts like this is a great opportunity. So thank you for having me again on, and get to share that. People can look back at like the Ancient Strength program that we talked about in the previous podcast. And then my new one is this Crash Proof Superpowered. They can get on and do my original Crash Proof program. So all about the durability and outdoor activities. We can go on in another podcast about that too, but just how people can rebuild that or find that. And again, like it's rare that a real injury just completely happens randomly, unless they're just way outside of their skill level, mountain biking, hiking, all that. But hopefully this, and I'm sure this will be out soon enough where they could take and utilize this in the summertime here and build, like I said, build some momentum. Hopefully that's the last takeaway, build some momentum going into the fall and beyond, and see maybe if they choose that kind of warrior mentality of getting outside every day or adding a little piece of my training every day. That makes me feel really good when I see people and can inspire them a little bit and share that just, it's worth it. Bottom line, it's just it's a great feeling that you just don't know till you experience that or get to that point. So hopefully that's a takeaway. And for some other coaches who are maybe spinning their wheels with their clientele and finding ways to work on that, I can speak to that too, that you set that intention, you put in that work, you surround yourself with good people, good things will happen. And just like our kettlebell, we spend enough time under the bells and we follow the stuff and we're moving some weight around real consistently with good technique, good eyes. It's gonna result in some really good things.
Yeah. Perfect, man. John, you're the best, man. Great seeing you. Awesome.
Appreciate you.
Guys, thank you so much. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.